Hi everyone. So I just had a tick attack. That was fun. My service dog is eating his dinner right now, so if you hear some clanging, that won't last for much longer. But hi, my name is May. I have Tourette syndrome. My pronouns are them and they. I have Tourette syndrome, which means I have a brain disorder that makes me tick. It gives me sounds and movements that are uncontrolled. Those are what are the tics, T-I-C-S. There is no K, it's not the bug. It affects my legs and my walking, so sometimes I use a wheelchair, sometimes I use a mobility support dog. It affects my arms, my hands, my mouth, my face, really any muscle you can think of, including my butt cheeks, have constant tics in them. So something on me is pretty much always moving unless I'm in a heightened state of focus. So a lot of my viewers are above 18, but I didn't want to flag this video as for 18 and older because I feel like important sex education and like knowing about consent and care is something that you should know at any age that you are mature enough to understand what it means, or to grow up understanding what the importance of these things are. And so with these things I'm talking about are validation, it's intimacy and disability. So validation, communication, consent, and care. The first one, validation. If you're dating somebody with a disability, if your partner has a disability, if you have a disability, if you both have disabilities, if neither of you have disabilities, it's still important that you validate each other's struggles and differences, you know? So for me, I have Tourette syndrome, and my last partner was always very cognizant of that, knowing that I had extra needs that I was exceptional in certain areas. And so they would always validate that, like, hey, you're having a really bad tick day. Would you like help? Or like, hey, I noticed that for some reason you're punching yourself a lot. Do you want to quickly check out and we'll put a chest pad on? Things like that. So that was validating that they saw my disability. They saw when I was having struggles, but they didn't always mention. They weren't like, hey, this is my partner. They have Tourette syndrome. You know, they never did that to me. I've only really been in a relationship with one person while I've had my crazy Tourette's. But my boyfriend in high school was really cool about cluing people in that I had like minor tics. If he even noticed I had tics, which were really rare. He knew I had tics, but we didn't know it was Tourette's yet. So, that is validation. Always making sure that you're seeing the person, but also seeing their disabilities and struggles that come with it. The next one is communication. Communication is incredibly important. Communication is exactly what it sounds like, communicating with your partner. Talking about things you like, you don't like, you want to try, you don't want to try, something that you might like one day, you might not like another day. Communication is very important. You don't always have to say yes to things. You can say no, and here's why I don't want to do that. But sometimes you need to remember you don't always owe an explanation. If you're not comfortable with something and you say no, that should be respected pretty much all the time. So, consent. Where does consent tie into communication? Well, consent is basically one of the most important things we can ever know in intimacy and sex and stuff like that. It's yes, it's affirming things. It's saying what you're comfortable with. It's saying what you want to deal with. It's saying what you don't want to deal with, what you want to try, and what you want to stay away from. These are all important things about consent. Now, consent should usually be some kind of verbal approval. If you're someone who signs, I'll put captions down here. If you're someone who signs, and you don't verbalize, like, obviously use whatever you need. So what counts as consent? Well, is nodding consent? You're gonna want to usually say yes or sign yes or show yes. Nodding might be a little vague. Another thing is, when you have Tourette's, you want to make sure that you're not listening to your partner's tics. Like, hey, do you want to try this? And if you don't want to and you say, hell yeah, you want to make sure that you're catching that hell yeah is a tic. And you can always ask for verification. I always appreciated when my partner asked me for verification on things like that. Because half the time I was like, no, don't really want to do that. Don't know why I agreed to do that. That was kind of weird. I can only think of 2 instances where those happened, but whatever. Another thing is yes, no, and maybe. This is really important to know. Yes, no, maybe. You can find charts of them. I mean, this includes things for like relationships, like, are you okay if I hold your hand in public? Can I hold your hand in private? Can I kiss you on the cheek? Can I kiss you on the mouth? And they include things in the bedroom like, can we try it this way? Can we try it that way? Do you want to see if this works for either one of us? No? Okay. So you can have yes, no, or maybe. And the thing is, something that's a yes one day might not be a yes the next day. Something that's a no, you might want to try as a maybe one day. You don't have to. As long as you are using consent, which is giving the go ahead, using the yes between both people or all people. How many people are included in this? Bless you, Damien. That was a burp. I don't know if you bless burps. Is very important. So what something is a no might be a maybe. What's a maybe might be a yes, might be a no. What's a yes one day might be a no. And it's important that you respect that. So we've talked about validation, communication, consent, and lastly, care. You want to make sure that you are listening to what somebody is saying. I know that sarcasm can be a love language for a lot of people, but it's always important to touch base and have that reality of, just so you know, I might tease you, but I do it because I love you. Is that okay? And honestly, listen, if you've been teasing someone and they don't like it, take that into consideration. I am one of those people who cannot be teased because I am super sensitive. Like, people will make jokes at me and they'll be like, yeah, I bet you can't do that because you have Tourette's, ha ha ha. And I'm like, okay, but I can cook with a knife. Or they'll be like, you know, just they're always jokes, or like, I bet you're really loud during sex because you have Tourette's, and I'm like, not because I have Tourette's. Anyways, so yeah, care, listen, because abuse comes in many forms. If you feel like you're not being cared about, somebody might be neglecting you, somebody might be hostile towards you, verbally, emotionally, sexually. These are just big red flags you should look out for. So any kind of discomfort in a relationship, anytime you don't feel cared about, really look into it. If you're concerned that you're in a relationship and you can't get out of it, or you're in a relationship where you're afraid you'll be hurt, or you're in a relationship where you can't communicate, contact someone as an outside third party. Run it past them. Tell them if you think you're in danger. And if you need to leave a relationship because it's abusive, leave the relationship. You don't owe them any explanation. If somebody really doesn't know what they did wrong and they emotionally abused you, it might be time for you to step back and say you need to figure it out. So it ended on a little bit of a dark note, but remember, validate you see people's differences, but that doesn't make them totally different. Communicate with each other. Make sure that you are on the same page and check in with each other frequently. Consent, always use your communication to give yes ands or no's, buts, everything. Communicate. And care. Make sure that you're caring for your loved one, your loved ones, anyone you're in. I'm not judging. Also, trans rights are human rights. Love you all. Bye.